This series begins by showing a man named Gong Ma-sung, a great doctor and the heir of Sunwoo Group, a conglomerate family that runs hospital and hotel businesses. On that sunny day, Ma-sung is seen driving on a business trip in Hainan, China. On the other hand, Ju Gi-boom is a beautiful artist whose name is currently in the spotlight. Gi-boom, who is currently filming an advertisement, is required to get into the water. However, due to childhood trauma, she is unable to do so. Seeing this, Kim Bom-soo feels frustrated and is also afraid of losing his business. Seemingly indifferent to Gi-boom's condition, Bom-soo continues to pressure her to come and do it. Gi-boom, who has already messed everything up, ends up having to shoot another scene. However, she just does not like her co-star because Gi-boom feels that Hyung-joon is a jerk who always tries to touch her. Gi-boom even hopes that this will be her last shoot with Hyung-joon. A moment later, Gi-boom is forced to be left alone because her group has not yet arrived, but this situation leads her to meet Ma-sung. At that moment, Gi-boom keeps walking while feeling pain in her stomach, until finally, she tries to convince a cafe guard to let her in and use the toilet. Unexpectedly, Gi-boom speaks in Korean, which makes the cafe guard not understand. Unexpectedly, Ma-sung mistakenly thinks that Gi-boom is his business partner named Ju, so he asks her to sign his contract letter. However, what he receives is just a random signature, which makes Ma-sung demand an explanation, as he believes that Gi-boom has ruined his contract letter. Unfortunately, it is difficult for Gi-boom to explain, especially in her state of stomach pain. Not long after, Ju, whom Ma-sung was waiting for, finally arrives and immediately signs his contract. Seeing this, Gi-boom feels embarrassed and decides to leave. However, without realizing it, a group of thugs follows her and tries to disturb her. In the midst of this event, Ma-sung suddenly comes to rescue Gi-boom and takes her away. At that moment, he smiles seeing Gi-boom, who is scared, and it is clear that Ma-sung has fallen in love with her. He even buys Gi-boom new shoes and is willing to cancel his flight appointment. Knowing this, Gi-boom feels uncomfortable and asks Ma-sung not to worry about her. Moreover, she promises to repay all of Ma-sung's kindness. At the same time, a boy suddenly runs up to them, accidentally causing Ma-sung and Gi-boom to fall into the water. In Ma-sung's embrace, Gi-boom feels scared because of memories of her childhood trauma of almost drowning. After managing to get to the shore, Ma-sung confidently declares his feelings to Gi-boom, even though it is their first meeting. Gi-boom just remains silent, but it is evident that she warmly welcomes his feelings. Gi-boom also does not want their meeting to end there, so she takes the initiative to bring Ma-sung to spend the whole day with her. That night, they promise each other to meet again at the same place. However, upon arriving there, Gi-boom does not see Ma-sung. Shortly after, without realizing that Ma-sung has had an accident, Gi-boom goes home with a broken heart. Afterward, Gi-boom encounters Hyung-joon, who then invites her to leave. Seeing this, Gi-boom gives a cold reaction to Hyung-joon, unaware of the evil intentions that have been planned. 3 years after the incident, Ma-sung unexpectedly suffers from short-term memory loss. Every night, precisely at midnight, his memories of the activities he did the previous day disappear. As a result of this condition, all the memories and experiences he just went through vanish without a trace. To help with this situation, Ma-sung decides to write down everything he experiences in his diary. In this way, he hopes to remember everything that happened when the next day arrives. Meanwhile, 3 years after the controversy that befell her, Gi-boom experiences drastic changes in her life. Now, she has to face the bitter reality of losing her career and now lives as an ordinary person. In this situation, her innocence is sometimes exploited by those around her. Nevertheless, Gi-boom continues to live her life with resilience, fighting to survive and provide for her family. One day, Gi-boom meets Ma-sung again, but their meeting feels different because Ma-sung is no longer the man she knew 3 years ago, since he has forgotten everything, including the memories between them. As a result, Gi-boom can only swallow this bitter reality with deep disappointment. Unexpectedly, for the first time since the accident that happened to him, Ma-sung is able to remember events from the previous day. However, he is continually haunted by the image of an unknown woman who always appears in his mind. Disturbed by the presence of this woman, Ma Sung tries to find answers through all his journals. Despite this, none of the journals relate to this woman. Moreover, memories of her persistently overshadow Ma Sung's thoughts. Therefore, he asks his secretary, Woo Jin, for help in finding out who the woman is. After leaving her acting career, Gi Boom now works as a specialist reporter on a fishing boat for a director named Byung-tae. Unfortunately, their working relationship does not go smoothly, as Byung-tae feels annoyed after Gi Boom damages his camera, leading him to demand compensation and even fire her. Realizing that her situation is becoming increasingly difficult, Gi Boom decides to focus on running her online store business. Even though she wants to look for another job, the videos of Gi Boom have gone viral on the internet. The video shows her performing a ritual to expel her bad luck by dancing while drinking burnt ash water. Unexpectedly, this act was the result of her director's own antics, who is still annoyed with her. Until one day, the video reaches Ma Sung, making him realize that Gi Boom is the woman he has been searching for all along. Based on information from his secretary, Ma Sung also learns that Gi Boom is a famous celebrity whose career was destroyed due to the murder scandal involving Hyungjun. Although she was declared innocent, Hyungjun's family and fans still believe that Gi Boom is his murderer. This situation has led her to have many people who hate her, which has also caused her online store business to struggle. Knowing Gi Boom's situation, Ma Sung tries to order 100 pieces of clothing. At first, Gi Boom thinks that the order is just a prank. However, tempted by the amount of money she would receive, she ultimately agrees. Nevertheless, there is one condition set by Ma Sung, which is that he wants the order delivered personally by Gi Boom. Reluctantly, she has to accept this condition without knowing that the man is Ma Sung. As Gi Boom walks to the address given, she is surprised to find that the house where Ma Sung currently lives is actually the house where she used to live before going bankrupt. Upon arriving, Gi Boom is shocked to discover that Ma Sung is the one who ordered all the clothes. Confusion increases when she sees Ma Sung's reaction, as if he does not recognize her. As a result, for yet another time, she feels heartbroken. Meanwhile, the memory of Gi Boom seems unable to leave Ma Sung's mind. Every time he remembers her, he feels his heart racing uncontrollably. Therefore, to alleviate the discomfort in his heart, that night Ma Sung forces himself to meet Gi Boom and tries to ask for an explanation about their relationship in the past. However, Gi Boom, unaware of the illness Ma Sung suffers from, only thinks that he is a jerk who dates any woman and then quickly discards them. As a result, memories of Gi Boom always resurface, causing Ma Sung to wake up again with that image in his mind. Ma Sung feels that something is off about himself, leading to another encounter between the two. Although they appear close, the reality is that at that moment, Ma Sung no longer recognizes Gi Boom. However, his heart and mind seem to rebel, as those memories always emerge whenever he sees her. With no other choice, Ma Sung shares all the oddities he feels with Dr. Yoon, his personal doctor. From this explanation, the doctor concludes that Ma Sung has actually fallen in love with the girl, and all the oddities he experiences are instinctive reactions of someone in love. That is why Ma Sung cannot forget Gi Boom, even though his memories fade every day. Eventually, Ma Sung realizes his feelings for Gi Boom, and for the first time, he writes about his feelings in his journal. Meanwhile, as if giving a glimmer of hope in her life, Gi Boom feels happy when Ki-jun offers her a part-time job. Ki-jun is a huge fan of Gi Boom and is also Ma Sung's cousin. Moreover, due to his sincere love for Gi Boom, Ki-jun is willing to start his own agency and make her the first artist to join. Nevertheless, Ki-jun is actually a spoiled child who depends on his mother. Without his mother's support, he feels worthless. Because he does not receive support from his mother, he eventually asks for help from his cousin, Ma Sung, to support his agency. Since then, Ma Sung becomes the owner of the agency building and plays an important role there. However, the controversy involving Gi Boom in the past seems to be an obstacle for her to be accepted. Although Ki-jun insists on including her as an artist, CEO Jang believes her presence will only cause problems in the future. Additionally, Gi Boom also receives advice from her friend, Nanju, hoping that she can regain her career and live her life as she did before. To clear her name, Nanju also suggests that Gi-boom consider the contract offer. Even so, Gi-boom feels that it is impossible for her to live as she did before. It seems as if she has resigned herself and accepted her current state, even though she still longs for those times. To comfort herself, Gi-boom ultimately decides to sign the contract. But an unexpected incident occurs when she accidentally stains the contract, which leads to it being discarded. On the other hand, after learning that Ma-sung occupies Gi-boom's old house, Ki-jun rushes to meet him. At that time, he continues to persuade and asks Ma-sung to give him the house. However, Ma-sung explains that he acquired the house through hard work, even using company funds to buy it. It turns out that Ki-jun intends to gift the house to Gi-boom. Despite this, Ma-sung remains adamant about not giving it to him, which angers Ki-jun. Furthermore, Ma-sung never imagined that the house he currently occupies was once Gi-boom's home. The next day, Ma-sung wakes up as usual and opens the journal containing all his memories of Gi-boom. At that moment, he feels that something remains unresolved between them, prompting him to decide to meet her. When the two meet, Ma-sung shows her a pair of red shoes, but Gi-boom only remains silent upon seeing them. Instead of providing an explanation, Gi-boom tells Ma-sung to leave and to throw away all those items, as they no longer have anything to do with her. Meanwhile, Lee Ha-yeom was seen extremely angry upon discovering that the necklace she was wearing was made of fake fur. As a popular celebrity with an arrogant temperament, Ha-yeom immediately scolded Nanju, even threatening to fire her. Shortly after, Gi-boom arrived and approached them, surprising Ha-yeom. At that moment, Ha-yeom brought up Gi-boom's attitude 3 years ago, which she considered arrogant. However, Gi-boom did not remember her at all. As a result, with a sarcastic glance, Ha-yeom mocked her appearance, prompting Gi-boom to apologize and admit that she had made the necklace. Gi-boom also explained that the necklace was only meant to be worn for filming, so she made it from fake fur, especially since time was very limited. Upon hearing this explanation, Ha-yeom became even angrier and ordered Gi-boom to kneel before her, as if she wanted to vent her anger. Unable to bear seeing the woman he loved treated that way, Ma-sung immediately grabbed Gi-boom's hand and took her away from there. At the same time, Ha-yeom was even more shocked when she realized that Ma-sung was her first love from elementary school. Elsewhere, Gi-boom never imagined that the contract would lead her to step into her new agency. It turned out that the contract was sent along with a script written by her father. Although CEO Jang did not like her presence, Ki-jun was very enthusiastic about welcoming her. At the same time, Gi-boom informed her family that she would be returning to her career, which of course surprised them. However, Gi-boom tried to assure them that this might be the best choice. On the other hand, CEO Jang seemed to find it very difficult to accept Gi-boom, with a clear look of annoyance on his face. Nevertheless, this did not dampen Gi-boom's determination, as she remained committed to her decision to continue her career, even though she was aware that it would not be easy. Gi-boom's joining the agency made Ki-jun even more enthusiastic about his career. As a first step, he decided to participate in a variety show. However, realizing that he was not smart enough to keep up with the show, Ki-jun eventually asked Ma-sung for help, even though they were still fighting. When approached, Ma-sung ignored the request, which made Ki-jun ask Gi-boom to be his partner in the show. Ma-sung, knowing about this, felt reluctant to let Gi-boom be with another man, so he changed his mind and decided to join. Realizing that the show would take place in a broadcasting station filled with bright lights, Ma-sung tried to back out and hide to avoid Ki-jun. At that moment, he accidentally overheard a conversation between Gi-boom and Bom-soo. In that conversation, Bom-soo mocked Gi-boom and brought up the incident from 3 years ago, even slapping her. Seeing this treatment made Ma-sung rethink his intention to leave the place. Soon after, Ma-sung walked in with sunglasses on his face. Unexpectedly, he answered the questions quickly and correctly. However, when he reached the last question, Ma-sung chose not to answer because the question was on a screen that he could not see. Realizing this, Ki-jun, who was eager to win, reflexively pulled off his glasses. As a result, the dazzling flashes of light made Ma-sung feel an overwhelming tightness and pain. It was revealed that, as a child, Ma Sung had experienced an accident that killed both of his parents. This accident not only left him traumatized, but also made him more sensitive to light. Therefore, Ma Sung always tried as much as possible to avoid light. As a result, the severe pain he felt always reminded him of the heartbreaking events of the past. Shortly after, Ma Sung found himself in a hospital. At that moment, Dr. Yoon, who knew that Ma Sung had gone to the event for Gi-boom, asked him not to do risky things that would endanger his life. After lying weak and unconscious for 2 hours, Ma Sung wanted to see Gi-boom. However, in front of him was Ki-jun, who was whining and worrying about him, unaware that his actions had endangered his life. Since he couldn't meet Gi-boom, Ma Sung decided to go see her at home. At that time, he wanted to relieve his longing and make sure the woman he adored stopped being sad. Previously, Ma Sung had never gone out at night or approached a woman. However, since meeting Gi-boom, he was willing to do anything, even if it threatened his safety. Some time later, CEO Jang was seen introducing Gi-boom to a successful director colleague. At that moment, he asked the director to give Gi-boom a chance to participate in his latest project, even if it was just for a small role. Unfortunately, the man refused the request because he didn't want to take risks by involving an artist who had been involved in controversy, as he believed it could jeopardize his new project. Sadly, the director even suggested to CEO Jang to recruit Gi-boom for an adult film. Fortunately, CEO Jang was not the type of person who liked to exploit others, even in the most difficult situations. On the other side, Gi-boom sometimes wished that 3 years ago Ma Sung had kept his promise to come. Maybe she wouldn't have met Hyung-jun, and her life wouldn't have changed as it did now. In a drunken state, Gi-boom immediately expressed all her disappointments to Ma Sung about the shoes he bought for her, how he saved her from the water, and helped her from a group of thugs. She also revealed how she had waited for him that day, but Ma Sung didn't understand any of her words at all. That day, Gi-boom went to see Ma Sung to question why he hadn't shown up 3 years ago. However, she accidentally crossed paths with Hae-im, who already assumed that Gi-boom had come to see Ma Sung too. Hae-im, who had feelings for Ma Sung, started to feel jealous and immediately threw hurtful words at Gi-boom. At that moment, she accused Gi-boom of making Ma Sung her sponsor for her career. Additionally, Hae-im also knew about her visit to the director, so she accused her of being willing to act in adult films because of her poverty. Gi-boom, who could no longer stand it, asked her to stop, but Hae-im pulled at her collar instead. This provoked a resistance from Gi-boom, ultimately causing Hae-im to fall. The incident, of course, caught the attention of the crowd around them, who began gossiping about Gi-boom and called her a killer. At that moment, Ma Sung tried to intervene and calm Gi-boom, but feelings of disappointment and anger seemed to be raging in her heart. That night, Gi-boom attended a luxurious party with Ki-jun attended by the upper class. At that place, they met Suk-won, Ma Sung's colleague and a wealthy businessman, who seemed to have a grudge against Gi-boom. Apparently, 3 years ago, Suk-won had made Gi-boom a model for an advertisement for his apartment company. However, due to the scandal that ensnared her, his company suffered huge losses. Eventually, Suk-won intended to humiliate Gi-boom by inviting Ma Sung to the party under the pretext that he would donate 10 billion won to his Healing Village project. Unexpectedly, Suk-won burned a check for 10 million won in front of the public and put it into a wine glass. At that moment, he bullied Gi-boom by mentioning a drink mixed with ashes meant to remove bad luck, then asking her to drink it in exchange for 1 billion won. Even so, Gi-boom didn't feel that low, as she immediately poured the drink on Suk-won's face. Unwilling to accept this treatment, Suk-won tried to hit her. However, Ma Sung quickly stopped him, and he also immediately kissed Gi-boom in front of everyone. The next morning, Ma Sung woke up with a smile, remembering the events of the previous night. It turned out that the memories of last night were not erased from his mind at all. In fact, the feelings growing for Gi-boom were increasing day by day. Even, Ma Sung intentionally gave her a special place in a cafe. Meanwhile, for the first time since the controversy that befell her, Gi-boom appeared back on television. Bom-soo, who was aware of this, attempted to do something malicious by swapping the location of the event. Additionally, since Gi-boom had a phobia of water, Bom-soo persuaded the director to change the event location to a swimming pool. During the shooting, Gi-boom experienced bad luck as she fell into the water during a game, making her the subject of entertainment for those around her. They even claimed that Gi-boom was just pretending to drown. Not only that, but Bom-soo also asked a journalist to publish the incident in an article. As a result, Gi-boom became gossip material. Amidst the chaos, Ma-sung continued to try to save Gi-boom. Eventually, he agreed to attend the variety show that brought him together with Haeyeom. Apparently, Haeyeom decided to participate in the variety show to find her first love, who turned out to be Ma-sung himself. During the show, Ma-sung commented that Haeyeom looked very different from before, mentioning that she might have had plastic surgery, which he learned from Nanju. Thanks to that remark, Ma-sung and Haeyeom became trending topics, thus diverting attention from Gi-boom. With mixed feelings, Gi-boom left the place and walked alone. Her steps took her to the cafe, where she had a special spot until her tears burst forth. Soon, Gi-boom saw a man who looked like the man she loved. Sure enough, Ma-sung quickly came to her as she was crying. Furthermore, through Nanju's story, Gi-boom learned that Ma-sung's presence at the previous event was to help her, to divert the bad rumors about her. Consequently, Gi-boom went to Ma-sung and expressed her desire to treat him to a meal as a form of gratitude. At the same time, Haeyeom truly could not control her feelings for Ma-sung. That morning, Ma-sung checked his journal as usual and still clearly remembered his date with Gi-boom. However, he did not know that there would be a board meeting that day. In the meeting, proposals for changes to his Healing Village project were discussed. The document also focused on building a branch hospital rather than developing the Healing Village. Moreover, his signature was clearly seen there, but Ma-sung felt he had never and could never have signed it. Because of this, Dr. Yoon stated that Ma-sung might have forgotten, despite his unpredictable condition. After that, Ma-sung hurried home and checked his journal, still in disbelief that he would propose such a thing. Not finding it, Ma-sung tried to investigate by looking at the scans of his brain, and strangely, he did not feel any symptoms at all. This made him wonder why a new problem emerged in his memory. Meanwhile, Dr. Yoon's expression and reaction seemed to suggest something deeper. A few days earlier, Ma-sung had shown a picture of a child and a woman who was bending down. At that time, the woman seemed to be saying something to the child, while behind her were 3 other women. Not getting any answers, Ma-sung then tried to find answers through photos from his parents' funeral. However, upon seeing them, Ma-sung just fell silent and realized that he was slowly beginning to regain his childhood memories. Another oddity arose when Ki-jun suddenly appeared at Ma-sung's house. In a drunken state, Ki-jun thought that Ma-sung was the one who opened the door for him, not realizing that he was actually asleep. Meanwhile, to further convince himself, Ma-sung tried to compare his signature with the signature in the document, as he suspected that someone had manipulated his signature. Additionally, Ma-sung also suspected that the person used the same pen as him. However, when he went to the store where he bought the pen, the seller said that the pen was a unique item specially made for him, so no one else could have it. As a result, Ma-sung was truly perplexed by the situation he was facing, as if he had been slapped by reality. Soon after, Ma-sung discovered that someone close to him, someone who knew his secret and had been with him for 34 years, had betrayed him behind his back. At the next board meeting, Ma-sung immediately stated that the signature on the document was not his, but had been forged by someone who would gain the most if the Healing Village project changed its function. Although Ma-sung did not mention who that person was, Chairwoman Gong knew that the person in question was herself. With all the shares he owned, Ma-sung tried to defend the Healing Village project. Furthermore, he insisted on establishing a charity institution instead of a profit-generating branch hospital. Not long after, Ma-sung is seen rush to meet Gi-boom, clearly remembering their date promise. However, just as he was about to cross, the light from a car suddenly dazzled his view, blurring his sight. This incident unintentionally awakened painful memories of his parents' death. Additionally, the hurtful words from his aunts echoed in his ears, including the words of Chairwoman Gong, who referred to him as a cursed child, the cause of his parents' death. The woman's words were clearly implied in his mind, instructing him to obey every command, accompanied by a threat of scolding him. But he forgot about his date with Gi-boom. he couldn't remember why he was there. At the same time, Gi-boom is seen patiently waited for Ma-sung until late into the night, but the man she was waiting for did not arrive. For some reason, this reminded her of an event 3 years ago when Ma-sung also failed to keep his promise to come. In the end, Gi-boom returned home feeling disappointed. Meanwhile, Ma-sung, who didn't understand the situation he was facing, decided to see Dr. Yoon. At that time, he explained all the symptoms he was experiencing, leading the doctor to conclude that Ma-sung had nerve damage. Due to this damage, he could remember his past memories, but this automatically made him forget what he was supposed to do. On the other hand, Woo Jin finally confessed that during the 3 years he worked for Ma-sung, he had been spying on him. All of this was at the request of Chairwoman Gong, who asked him to report every behavior of Ma-sung, including even the words spoken at home. However, Woo Jin had no idea that someone would break in and manipulate Ma-sung's journal. Feeling guilty, he intended to resign, but Ma-sung had already come to trust him and regarded his secretary as part of his memory. Because of this, Ma-sung did not allow his secretary to quit, considering he needed him in case he lost his memory again. After that, Ma-sung tried to remember something he had just forgotten. His secretary immediately informed him that he might have forgotten his date with Gi-boom. Sure enough, when the two met, Gi-boom looked annoyed. Meanwhile, Ki-jun vented his heartbreak to his mother because he still couldn't accept the fact that Gi-boom loved Ma-sung. In his heartbroken state, Ki-jun thought that isolating himself at a temple would ease his pain until Ma-sung came to pick him up. At the same time, seeing Ki-jun return made Gi-boom feel happy and relieved. In short, after various efforts by CEO Jang, Gi-boom finally got the opportunity to audition. To celebrate this, Ki-jun took the initiative to invite Gi-boom and others to celebrate with a small party. That day, Ki-jun took them camping but did not inform them that the location was actually Ma-sung's healing village, where he happened to be at the time. Ma-sung, unaware of the party, then called Gi-boom to invite her to watch. However, Gi-boom replied that she couldn't because she was camping out of town. Hearing Ki-jun's voice in that conversation, Ma-sung immediately felt jealous. Not far from there, Ma-sung found the camping equipment and saw that Gi-boom and the others were camping. Since Ki-jun had entered without permission, Ma-sung gave them a small punishment to clean up the scattered trash. However, during the activity, Ki-jun had to leave because Haeyeom suddenly came to meet him, leaving Gi-boom alone with Ma-sung. With no other choice, they continued their walk together, and when they reached a fountain, Ma-sung explained the significance of his healing village. He said that in front of the fountain, someone would lead them to their happiest days. Ma-sung then asked when her happiest days were, but Gi-boom could only fall silent. It turned out that Gi-boom was reminded of the memory of their meeting 3 years ago. Unfortunately, that memory could not be the best one because Ma-sung had forgotten it. Feeling sad about this reality, Gi-boom walked away, carrying her script. Shortly after, Ma-sung suddenly received a call from his business partner Ben. During the conversation, Ben informed Ma-sung about an investment plan related to his healing village project. Eventually, they both agreed to have a meeting 2 days later. Ma-sung immediately prepared to write down the important information, but accidentally dropped a photo from his notes. As he looked at the photo, his vision suddenly blurred, causing him to lose consciousness for a moment. Flashbacks from 3 years ago appeared in his memory, especially his first meeting with Gi-boom in Hainan. With a smile on his face, Ma-sung bravely approached Gi-boom and looked at her innocently. As a result, Gi-boom was left speechless when Ma-sung admitted that he finally remembered the memory of their first meeting. Elsewhere, Haeyeom's attention shifted to Ki-jun after realizing that Ma-sung was not interested in her, so Haeyeom began openly pursuing Ki-jun. That day, Haeyeom was seen forcing Ki-jun to go home with her, leaving Gi-boom and Ma-sung to go home together as well. At that time, Ma-sung began writing down the details of his first meeting with Gi-boom 3 years ago. He started to note every event that occurred, down to the exact hour. The harder he tried to remember, Ma-sung realized that after they had promised to meet, around 6 or 7 in the evening, he had seen something. However, by 8 o'clock, he had the accident, which meant there was a 1-hour gap before the accident happened. Even though this memory had returned, Ma-sung realized that something else was now forgotten. but he couldn't recall what had disappeared from his memory. Driven by curiosity, Ma Sung wanted to know if what he had seen before the accident was related to the incident. Wu Jin then provided a series of photos from around the accident site, including pictures of traffic signs and the row of shops nearby. However, since the incident happened 3 years ago, many places had changed, making it even harder for Ma Sung to find the clue he was looking for. When he returned to his residence, Ma Sung suddenly lost consciousness again, which caused him to forget the code to his house. Confused, Ma Sung tried asking Wu Jin for the code, but he didn't know it. Instead, Wu Jin suggested that Gi Boom might be able to help him. Without hesitation, Ma Sung immediately asked her to come to his house. As soon as she arrived, Ma Sung stared at her, and his memory of the house returned instantly. Inside the house, Gi Boom's attention was drawn to a photo featuring a staircase, the place where they had promised to meet. Curious, Gi Boom asked what had really happened to Ma Sung 3 years ago. In the end, Ma Sung explained that on that day, he had kept his promise. However, the accident he experienced had prevented their meeting. Not wanting to make Gi Boom feel guilty, Ma Sung decided not to continue his story. Meanwhile, Ma Sung's presence as a strong heir threatened the positions of his 4 aunts. To strengthen her position, Chairwoman Gong asked her 3 sisters to arrange a match between Ki Jun and the daughter of the heir. However, Songhua actually liked Ma Sung, and the candidate's family also preferred him as their son-in-law. Before the discussion could take place, they heard a strange rumor that Ma Sung already had a girlfriend. At the same time, Ki Jun was spending the night with a woman who was none other than Haiyim, leading their family to believe that Ma Sung and Ki Jun were involved in a love triangle with a popular star. Upon learning about the situation, Chairwoman Gong became furious and immediately demanded her son end the relationship, which she deemed inappropriate. However, she was completely unaware that the woman Ki Jun and Ma Sung actually liked was Gi Boom. At that meeting, Haiyim was thoroughly interrogated by Ma Sung's 3 aunts and Ki Jun's aunts, who did not know that Ki Jun and Ma Sung were actually family. They mocked Haiyim, belittling her as just the daughter of a company owner, which they thought was not on par with their family status. Meanwhile, Ma Sung had just realized that he had forgotten his meeting with Ben. Because of this, Ben felt unappreciated and eventually canceled his initial plan to invest in the healing village, causing the opportunity to obtain 100 billion won in funding to vanish. Soon after, Ma Sung stood before Chairwoman Gong to apologize for his mistake. Unfortunately, she truly could not tolerate the mistakes that Ma Sung might make in the future. Given his deteriorating health condition, Chairwoman Gong requested that he voluntarily resign and hand over his healing village project. Hearing that request, Ma Sung was shocked. Thinking that his aunt did not know about his illness since all this time, she had never expressed concern or asked about his health. Chairwoman Gong then brought up the inheritance distribution made by Ma Sung's grandfather, which she deemed unreasonable. She even mentioned that Ma Sung had killed his own parents, as if she had been forced to raise him. Her words immediately shattered Ma Sung's heart, as he never expected that Chairwoman Gong, whom he had always considered a parent, actually hated him so much. As if wanting to console himself, that night Ma Sung invited Gi Boom out. However, since she was busy preparing dinner at her house, she declined his invitation. Despite that, upon hearing Ma Sung's voice sounding weary, Gi Boom felt pity for him, and for the first time that night, she officially introduced Ma Sung to her family. Although it was just a simple dinner, the warmth of this small family left a lasting impression. On the other hand, Bomsu was doing everything he could to prevent Gi Boom from returning to her career, though his intentions were unknown. He made various attempts to thwart the girl, even daring to threaten Ma Sung by claiming that his appearance at the previous event had caused Haiyim to lose many advertisements. He also claimed to know something important that Ma Sung might not be aware of. That day didn't seem to be a good day for Gi Boom because Ki Jun unknowingly said that she was auditioning. Upon learning this, Bomsu immediately went to confront Gi Boom to hinder her progress. On the same day, Gi Boom was forced to face the bitter reality that Ma Sung had suffered brain damage, resulting in memory loss. Bomsu even stated that if they hadn't met 3 years ago, perhaps Ma Sung wouldn't have experienced this unfortunate fate. Consequently, Bomsu quickly accused Gi-boom of being the cause of Ma Sung's misfortunes. He even openly threatened to publicize his illness, which ruined his career if a famous doctor had memory loss. Upon hearing this, Gi-boom no longer cared about her audition and decided to go back. Under the pouring rain, she cried and walked alone, blaming herself for what had happened. Before long, Ma Sung appeared before her. Filled with regret, Gi-boom kept apologizing and pleading with Ma Sung to always remember her, despite his memories possibly fading away. After learning about his illness, Gi-boom decided to stay by his side and protect him. Boldly, she even announced their relationship in front of her family. Not long after, Ma Sung realized that his condition was worsening. He also knew that his personal doctor had colluded with his aunt. However, this did not deter him. Openly, in front of the doctor, Ma Sung declared that he would continue to uphold his Healing Village project, immediately raising concerns for Chairwoman Gong. After discovering that Gi-boom was the reason behind Ma Sung's recovering memories, Chairwoman Gong felt obstructed in her attempt to displace him as the heir. This prompted her to plot to eliminate Gi-boom from Ma Sung's life. Her ambition to control the company also grew stronger, as she had arranged a match between Ki-jun and Song-hwa. At that meeting, Chairwoman Gong gathered Ki-jun and Ma Sung together. She then asked Ma Sung to go on a blind date with Song-hwa. However, he firmly rejected the request, prompting Chairwoman Gong to ask Ma Sung to nominate Ki-jun as his replacement. Meanwhile, Gi-boom heard news that a famous American director was holding auditions for his latest film. Although Gi-boom was initially uncertain about participating, encouragement from Nanju led her to agree to take part in the audition. The next day, Gi-boom went to audition, but the audition was held at a golf course where Ma Sung was with Song-hwa. It was clear that Song-hwa had an interest in Ma Sung. However, Ma Sung openly stated that he had a girlfriend and shifted to offer Ki-jun as a substitute. Unfortunately, Song-hwa showed no interest in Ki-jun at all. Meanwhile, the director quickly introduced himself as Gilbert, claiming to have cast for major artists. Gi-boom's high spirits caught Gilbert's attention. However, when he saw her up close, Gi-boom immediately recognized him. It turned out the man was Byung-tae, her former director who had once embarrassed her by spreading a video of her drinking burnt ash water. As a result, her arrival there led to a misunderstanding. Chairwoman Gong started to approach Sa-rang, Gi-boom's younger sister, who was offered makeup because she liked it so much. After that, she also approached Gi-boom's younger brother, Ja-rang. Due to financial constraints, Ja-rang chose to work part-time instead of continuing his studies. He worked as a fried chicken delivery person at a restaurant until an unknown man suddenly appeared and bought all his fried chicken, which was apparently at the behest of Chairwoman Gong. Additionally, in her eyes, Man Shik, Gi-boom's father, was just an unemployed old man, an alcoholic and poor. Thus, she was sure that Man Shik would never be able to make his children happy. However, those hurtful words were met by Man Shik with a thrown sock. Unwilling to accept that response, Chairwoman Gong began to hurl more hurtful insults. She referred to his youngest daughter as spoiled and only concerned about makeup. Next, she criticized his second son, claiming he would never have a decent job. Chairwoman Gong also mentioned his eldest daughter, who had many debts, even saying that she would die before getting married. Before leaving, Chairwoman Gong threw a card at Man Shik, which contained a substantial amount of money. She then reminded Man Shik to know his place because Gi-boom was unworthy of Ma Sung. Upon arriving home, Gi-boom felt confused by all the makeup that Sa-rang had and the fried chicken that lay on their table. Sa-rang then explained that a rich aunt had given her all of that. Gi-boom certainly knew who her sister was referring to. Feeling humiliated and trampled on, Gi-boom intended to return all the gifts. Ma Sung, who knew nothing, was confused by Gi-boom's sudden cold demeanor. Woo Jin then informed him that perhaps his aunt had done something to Gi-boom and her family. To confirm this, Ma Sung asked his secretary to leave first while he planned to meet Gi-boom. On the other hand, as if not satisfied with destroying Gi-boom's life, Bomsu still intended to create new problems. With the help of his lawyer, he planned to reopen the case of Hyung-jun's death, exactly on the 3-year anniversary of the artist's passing. Bomsu was so confident that Ma Sung would never be able to remember it. even though they had met 3 years ago. Meanwhile, Ma Sung, who was walking, suddenly lost consciousness, causing memories from 3 years ago to come flooding back. Just before the accident, he recalled the face of a man, and more surprisingly, it was Bom Soo. However, when Ma Sung asked if they had met 3 years ago in Hainan, Bom Soo immediately denied it. Although he could have hidden it, Ma Sung could not be deceived because he could see the clear difference in his gaze. Meanwhile, Gi Boom realized that her love for Ma Sung could not be exchanged for anything. On that day, Gi Boom immediately returned all the gifts from Chairwoman Gong. Additionally, she also asked Chairwoman Gong to apologize to her family for insulting them. Already annoyed, Chairwoman Gong told Ma Sung that he would eventually forget all about the girl he liked. However, despite his illness, Ma Sung would still hold on to his feelings. As a result, Chairwoman Gong's patience had run out, and together with the doctor, she intended to remove Ma Sung from the company. Apparently, in the upcoming board meeting, she planned to publicize Ma Sung's illness, revoke all his shares, and take over the Healing Village project. Meanwhile, since Gi Boom returned the gifts from Chairman Gong, the atmosphere in her home became awkward, especially for Sao Rang, who appeared unenthusiastic and upset. Gi Boom realized that Sao Rang was just a teenage girl and tried to cheer her up. Although Gi Boom had attempted to buy her one of the items she wanted, it was too expensive for her. As an apology for his aunt's treatment, Ma Sung bought Sao Rang a lot of makeup. This gesture successfully brought a smile back to her. Additionally, Ma Sung also gifted Ja Rang an opportunity to enter university. On the other hand, Gi Boom was touched when she was surprised by the presence of her fans singing her song, creating an atmosphere that was vastly different from 3 years ago. While, for Gi Boom's father, Ma Sung gave a simple cactus that left a lasting impression. Meanwhile, to fulfill his ambition to imprison Gi Boom, Bom Soo fabricated new evidence. Apparently, he had found a bag that was identical to the one used by Gi Boom 3 years ago. To strengthen his plan, Bom Soo even placed drugs in the bag. After discovering his aunt and Dr. Yoon's plan, Ma Sung remained adamant about his project. For him, the Healing Village was very valuable and could help those in need. However, Chairman Gong and the doctor clearly opposed his dream of establishing the charity, as they believed it would be better to expand the hospital branches, which would certainly increase profits. Realizing this challenge, Ma Sung began to strategize to ensure his project came to fruition by inviting his business partners and close associates. That day, in front of all his guests, Ma Sung publicly announced his illness and declared that he would donate all his assets to the Healing Village, a place for less fortunate dementia sufferers. This announcement greatly shocked Ki Jun, who felt crushed upon learning about Ma Sung's condition. In his mind, feelings of sadness, anger, and disappointment mixed together. It was revealed, although Ki Jun sometimes acted annoyingly, he actually cared deeply for his cousin and feared losing him. From a distance, Haiyim, who witnessed everything, finally understood why Ma Sung had invited her. Apparently, Ma Sung indirectly asked her to comfort Ki Jun. After announcing his illness to the public, Ma Sung once again became the center of attention. Moreover, the decision to donate all his assets infuriated Chairman Gong. Although she asked him to reconsider, the idealistic Ma Sung stuck to his position. As a result, her plan to take over the company completely failed. On the other hand, when realizing that Ma Sung was suffering from an illness, Ki Jun was willing to let go of his first love. He decided to yield, but as a final request, Ki Jun wanted to spend a whole day with the woman he loved. To him, Gi Boom was a very special woman, even though Ki Jun knew his love was unlikely to be returned. Since that day, Ki Jun reluctantly decided to stop hoping for Gi Boom. Although his feelings for Gi Boom ran deep, Ki Jun now liked Haiyim, knowing that she was being taken advantage of by Bom Soo. That night, Ki Jun intended to comfort Haiyim and invite her to his agency. However, she was already hurt and reluctant to accept his invitation. Despite his best efforts to get closer to her, he always felt that Haiyim regarded him coldly. Meanwhile, Ma Sung experienced disturbances in his brain, which began to show strange symptoms, including a loss of appetite. In his memory, he saw the face of an unfamiliar man. Strangely, Ma Sung followed that man, and it turned out that the man was Bom-soo. Alongside this, news about Gi-boom spread again, announcing that the prosecution would reopen the case regarding Hyung-jun's death. Ma-sung's curiosity was now answered. He discovered that the man he had seen in his memory was Hyung-jun. Gi-boom's thoughts immediately turned to Bom-soo, who could not accept the evil intentions of his former CEO, who had framed him with a bag that clearly did not belong to him, making him a scapegoat. At the same time, people were confused about how Gi-boom, who was intoxicated, could be in the same room with Hyung-jun, who was also drunk. It was impossible for Hyung-jun to carry Gi-boom. Before executing his dirty deed, it was evident that Hyung-jun had consumed drugs. Not long after that, Hyung-jun felt severe pain in his chest and tried to call Bom-soo. Upon realizing this, Bom-soo rushed to him, but upon arrival, he found Hyung-jun dead. Additionally, to eliminate evidence, Bom-soo cleaned up the remaining illegal drugs. In his mind, Ma-sung couldn't bear to see Gi-boom having to undergo trial again as a suspect when she was innocent. Suddenly, a tattoo shop named Morsela came to his mind, the place where he met Bom-soo and Hyung-jun. Therefore, Ma-sung had little time because he wanted to remember what had happened at that time in order to be a witness to protect his woman. At that moment, he worked hard to recall all the fragments of memory. However, due to overexertion and poor eating habits, Ma-sung became exhausted. That's why Woo Jin took the initiative to invite Ma-sung to lunch at a Chinese restaurant. Upon arriving there, Ma-sung felt the same sensation as he did at the tattoo shop 3 years ago. Another strange coincidence was that the restaurant served a coconut tea from Hainan. When he drank it, another memory fragment emerged instantly, and to regain the full memory from 3 years ago, Ma-sung asked his personal doctor to hypnotize him. Hearing this, Dr. Yun warned him that this would worsen his condition and could even threaten his life. Nonetheless, Ma-sung seemed unconcerned because the most important thing for him right now was how to save Gi-boom. Soon, the day for Gi-boom's interrogation arrived. Upon arriving there, Gi-boom was immediately met with the anger of Hyung-jun's fans, who bombarded her with eggs and bottles. The insults directed at Gi-boom only added to the pain of that day. However, Ma-sung suddenly appeared and hugged her, trying to protect her from the fans' rage. Not only that, Ki-jun also came to help secure Gi-boom. On that day, Ma-sung was present as a witness, but when he was about to give his statement, he experienced a memory disruption that made him forget that crucial memory. Fortunately, thanks to the tattoo, Ma-sung managed to recall it again. As a result, he found himself entering that room and meeting the shop owner. Initially, Ma-sung was indifferent, but everything changed when he accidentally overheard a conversation between Bom-soo and Hyung-jun, who were plotting something evil against Gi-boom. Moreover, Ma-sung also saw them receiving a drug from the previous man. With that memory, Ma-sung was able to describe the shop owner, complete with his physical characteristics. Consequently, through Ma-sung's statement, Bom-soo was identified as a new suspect in Hyung-jun's death. Not long after the testimony given by Ma-sung, the police successfully captured the tattoo artist, who was also a drug dealer. With this arrest, Bom-soo was charged with drug trafficking. Fortunately, Gi-boom was cleared of all charges, proving that she had been innocent all along. Meanwhile, Bom-soo, who couldn't accept ending up in prison, started plotting to involve others. Additionally, Bom-soo discovered that the accident Ma-sung experienced 3 years ago was not just an ordinary accident. It turned out that someone had planned it. After saving Gi-boom, Ma-sung resumed his work activities as usual. However, his steps suddenly halted when he ran into Dr. Yun. In an instant, he recalled their conversation when he was in Hainan. Questions began to arise in his mind, and his curiosity led him to check the files from 3 years ago. At the same time, Woo Jin also mentioned that the week after he became the secretary, Ma-sung's inauguration should have taken place. However, he had an accident the day before his inauguration as a director. Moreover, there was shocking information regarding the change of location for the meeting between Ma-sung and his business partner, Ju, which was initially planned in Russia but changed to Hainan. To be more certain, Ma-sung tried to ask Dr. Yun about this, where he inquired if the doctor knew that he was in Hainan at that time, but Dr. Yun replied that he didn't know. In that moment, Ma-sung realized that his accident was not a coincidence. Additionally, He knew very well that the doctor had lied to him and was clear in his memory that he knew Ma Sung was in Hainan. To smooth his plans, Bomsu even insisted on digging for information related to the accident experienced by Ma Sung. At that moment, it was revealed that behind the tragic event, it was Dr. Yoon who attempted to kill Ma Sung. Taking advantage of the situation, Bomsu began to blackmail Chairwoman Gong. In front of both of them, Bomsu immediately threatened to reveal all this information, which would automatically cause significant losses for them. However, this could be resolved if Chairwoman Gong was willing to pay him 100 billion won and protect him from prison time. In a tight spot, Chairwoman Gong had no choice but to agree to the request. Unbeknownst to them, she secretly recorded all their conversations. Chairwoman Gong then handed the recording to Ma Sung. Upon listening to the contents of the recording, Ma Sung realized that his aunt was the mastermind behind the accident he experienced. Struck by this betrayal, Ma Sung couldn't contain his emotions and shed tears. The next day, Ma Sung asked Chairwoman Gong to meet him at a small restaurant. In front of his aunt, the table was filled with dishes, as if Ma Sung wanted to show her what she had done to him. Although Ma Sung put a spoonful of salt into his soup bowl, he still couldn't taste the dish. At that moment, Ma Sung revealed to his aunt that he had learned everything, including the accident from 3 years ago. Ma Sung still couldn't understand why his aunt, whom he had always considered a parent, could hate him and even want his death. Although he tried to be kind to the woman, Chairwoman Gong continued to look at him with hatred. In her eyes, Ma Sung was just an obstacle to her ambition of taking over the company. Meanwhile, after her name was cleared, Gi Boom was able to continue her career. A new opportunity arose when the director, who had previously rejected her, contacted her. The director immediately apologized for his behavior at that time and offered Gi Boom a role in his latest project. This good news marked an exciting new beginning for her to restart her career. That afternoon, after returning from an audition, Gi Boom intended to visit Ma Sung. Hearing his voice, which sounded gloomy, Gi Boom felt the need to comfort him. At that moment, Ma Sung showed a pained gaze mixed with disappointment, reflecting a deep wound. Furthermore, his body could not bear the pain and sadness until he finally collapsed. Not long after, Gi Boom and Woo Jin sat in the hospital waiting room with gloomy and anxious faces. Woo Jin then apologized for not informing her sooner about Ma Sung's worsening condition. He then gave Gi Boom a recording belonging to Ma Sung. After hearing the contents of the recording, Gi Boom fell silent and could not say anything more. It was difficult for Gi Boom to understand that Ma Sung was carrying all the burdens alone. If only he had spoken honestly, Gi Boom would have certainly tried to help him. However, Ma Sung preferred to keep everything hidden. After listening to the recording, Ma Sung, who had just regained consciousness, became silent and began to contemplate everything. After his condition improved, Ma Sung was seen inviting Gi Boom on a date. Apparently, he wanted to spend an entire day with a woman he loved, carving out sweet memories before he had to leave her forever. Meanwhile, Haiyem's first meeting with Chairwoman Gong seemed to receive a poor response. As Chairwoman Gong judged that Haiyem was a gold digger intending to exploit her son. Thus, she accused Haiyem of being the reason Ki-jun filed a request for inheritance rights from her. Unexpectedly, Chairwoman Gong openly asked Haiyem to stay away from her son. Despite not approving of their relationship, Ki-jun remained adamant about maintaining it because he had truly fallen in love with her. On the other hand, Ma Sung was increasingly determined to leave Gi Boom, but he also did not want to hurt her feelings. Ma Sung quickly said that he would go out of town to discuss an advertising contract and then offered that opportunity to Gi Boom. Additionally, Ma Sung had also booked a ticket to America for her to audition there. However, instead of feeling happy, Gi Boom felt sad. Even though it was only for a week, she seemed unwilling to be apart from the person she loved. On the day of her flight, Gi Boom took the time to meet Ma Sung and even prepared a lot of food for her lover. At the same time, Ma Sung met Ki-jun. Instead of being honest about his departure, Ma Sung advised Ki-jun to run his healing village. Although Ki-jun sometimes acted childish and looked foolish, Ma Sung actually cared for him very much. Seeing Ma Sung's unusual behavior, Ki-jun began to feel strange emotions in his heart. Unlike his aunt, Ma Sung was honest about his departure to her. He explained that he would be staying in Baltimore, his childhood home, and hoped she would keep this secret. Finally, he met Dr. Yoon, who gave him the latest research journal. Before his departure at the airport, Woo Jin came to see Ma Sung with the intention of accompanying him and dedicating himself as someone who would always be there for him. 1 week later, Gi Boom returned from her audition in America. Her arrival was greeted joyfully by Nanju, CEO Jang, and her manager. However, due to unknown circumstances, Ki Jun couldn't join them to pick her up. Additionally, Gi Boom felt confused because she also didn't see Ma Sung there. Since Ma Sung left without a word, Gi Boom and Ki Jun felt sad. It had been a month since he had left them, and no one could reach him. As a result, Gi Boom spent her days filled with hope, hoping to hear news from her beloved. During a conversation with her father, Gi Boom heard a story about a boy that made her realize the child who saved her from drowning was Ma Sung, the man she loved. It turns out, Ma Sung had been her lifesaver all along. 1 month had passed since Ma Sung disappeared, and all that was in Gi Boom's mind was waiting in the midst of emptiness. That morning, her hope seemed to be fulfilled when the silhouette of someone appeared before her, making her heart hope that it was the man she had longed for. Unexpectedly, it wasn't Ma Sung who appeared, but Woo Jin who came with bad news. At that moment, Woo Jin told her that initially, he went with Ma Sung for treatment for his illness. However, Ma Sung found no way out for his illness, so he left without a word. After that, Woo Jin searched for him in various hospitals, hoping to find any information. His departure in such a dire condition made Woo Jin believe that Ma Sung left to prepare for his death alone. Gi Boom immediately collapsed upon hearing all the explanations from Woo Jin, as if not believing what she had just heard. Not only that, Woo Jin had no other choice. Reluctantly, he gave Ma Sung's recording to Ki Jun. At the same time, upon learning that her mother was behind Ma Sung's accident, Ki Jun became very angry. Chairwoman Gong quickly stated that everything was done so Ki Jun could inherit. However, Ki Jun didn't care about the explanation because he only wanted to live freely and never once thought of taking over the company. A few days later, a letter arrived for Gi Boom, which turned out to be sent by Ma Sung from Hainan. Seeing this, Gi Boom felt she had to go meet him in Hainan, as she still held out hope of seeing her lover again, because whatever the outcome, she would still go meet him. Upon arrival, Gi Boom visited all the places where she and Ma Sung had spent time together a few years ago, although she didn't know where Ma Sung was. In her mind, she felt as if her presence could bring hope. Suddenly, a waiter brought a box to her containing a doll and a letter written by Ma Sung. As she read it, Gi Boom tried to hold back her tears, trying to accept the reality and be resigned. 1 year passed, and Gi Boom's career in the entertainment world soared again, surpassing the success of Haeim, who was once known as a popular artist. At the same time, Ki Jun has now replaced Ma Sung as the director, with a more mature and calm demeanor. However, their 3 aunts had to be detained for assaulting their driver and security personnel, while Chairwoman Gong was also implicated in similar actions. As a result of these actions, their company's stock value plummeted. Ki Jun then asked his mother to apologize publicly and attend the trial to be held accountable for her actions. Ki Jun also felt that this was a form of retribution for his mother's evil deeds against Ma Sung. Elsewhere, Woo Jin was seen walking towards Ma Sung, who had been living in a healing village all this time. Without anyone's knowledge, only Woo Jin and Dr. Yoon had been taking care of him. It all began with an unexpected meeting between Ma Sung and the doctor a year ago. At that time, Ma Sung, who was on the brink of death, met the doctor, and as if wanting to atone for his sins, Dr. Yoon decided to treat Ma Sung. After various therapies, his condition gradually improved, although he remembered little. That day, Ma Sung went to buy books with Woo Jin with the intention of training his memory. After that, they went to the Chinese restaurant they had visited before. However, Ma Sung didn't remember ever eating there. Eventually, because Woo Jin ate too much and complained of stomach pain, he had to leave him. Nevertheless, Ma Sung didn't just sit around, because he walked until he ended up entering a cafe that he had prepared specifically for Gi Boom. Seeing her photo, Ma Sung felt something in his heart, although he didn't know who the girl was. Suddenly, in his memory, he remembered a staircase. Because his doctor advised him to write down anything he remembered, Ma Sung began sketching. However, a waitress soon came and asked him to sit at another table because it was reserved for someone else. Shortly after, Ma Sung received a call from Woo Jin and immediately rushed off, leaving his drawing on the table. At the same time, Gi Boom had just arrived and was shocked to see the drawing. The drawing seemed to give her hope of meeting the man she loved. Meanwhile, feeling that Ma Sung's health had improved enough, Dr. Yoon finally introduced him to Ki Jun, who seemed unable to contain his longing for Ma Sung. Emotionally, Ki Jun hugged him and cried tears of joy, grateful that his cousin was still alive and recognized him. Sometime later, Gi Boom had to do a photo shoot in the healing village for the needs of her drama production. Following the director's instructions, Gi Boom walked alone through the place until suddenly, she saw a man who looked exactly like someone she knew, which moved her deeply upon seeing the man before her. Although Ma Sung no longer recognized her, for her, Ma Sung remained the man she deeply loved. However, when Gi Boom mentioned his name, suddenly memories of the past flooded back into his mind. Now, he remembered that the woman before him was the one who had filled his heart all this time. As a result, they couldn't bear the longing that had separated them. The reunion led them to marriage, but due to Ma Sung's memory condition, they had already held their wedding 4 times within 1 month. Nevertheless, this did not diminish their feelings for each other, as every day their companionship felt fresh and enduring. Moral lesson from the story: if you throw socks instead of insults, you might just become a fashion icon in your neighborhood. Remember, never trust a fried chicken delivery person who sells out all his chicken to a mysterious buyer. They might just be an undercover benefactor with unusual taste in snacks.